What if the worst prison in the world is not made of iron bars, but of your own thoughts? Imagine this carefully. Imagine doing something so irreversible that even if the world forgives you, you never forgive yourself. Today's story is inspired by the legendary psychological novel Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a book that doesn't simply tell a story about crime, but about the anatomy of guilt, pride, and the unbearable weight of conscience. But this is not a reading of the novel. This is a deep retelling, a journey into the mind of a man who believed he was above morality, until morality began to consume him. In a gray and suffocating city where poverty clung to every building like fog, there lived a young former student. He was intelligent, painfully intelligent. The kind of mind that analyzes everything. The kind that questions society. The kind that isolates itself because it believes it sees more clearly than others. He lived in a tiny rented room under a slanted roof. The ceiling was so low he sometimes felt like the walls were closing in. Dust gathered in the corners. The air felt heavy. He avoided people, not because he feared them, but because he believed they were ordinary. He was broke, hungry, alone. But what truly tormented him was not poverty. It was pride. He had developed an idea, a theory that started as philosophy and slowly transformed into justification. He believed that humanity was divided into two categories: the ordinary, who must obey laws and follow moral codes, and the extraordinary, who have the right to break those laws if it benefits humanity. History, in his mind, supported this belief. Powerful leaders had caused suffering, yet were celebrated as visionaries. They crossed moral lines and were later called great. So he began asking himself a dangerous question. If breaking the law leads to something greater, is it truly wrong? In the city lived an old moneylender. She was known for her cruelty. She preyed on desperation, charged unbearable interest, reduced people to humiliation for small amounts of money. To him, she became more than a person. She became a symbol, a test. If he eliminated her and used her wealth to improve his life, to do good, wouldn't that prove he was extraordinary? At first, the idea terrified him. Then he rationalized it. Then he rehearsed it in his mind. Then he convinced himself that hesitation was weakness, and greatness required bold action. The night he chose to act was suffocatingly quiet. His heartbeat felt louder than the city itself. Every step toward her apartment felt unreal, like walking through a dream he could still wake up from. But he didn't wake up. The act itself was messy, clumsy. There was no elegance in it, no heroic certainty, only chaos, shock, and a moment that divided his life into before and after. When it was done, he stood frozen. He expected to feel powerful. He expected to feel transformed. Instead, he felt nothing. Just silence. He left unnoticed. No one saw him. No alarm was raised. By every external measure, he had succeeded. But something invisible followed him home. At first, it was a subtle unease, a tightness in his chest, a sense that the air had changed. He told himself this was normal. Anyone would feel shaken. It would fade. It didn't fade. Sleep abandoned him. When he closed his eyes, his mind replayed fragments of the night, distorted, exaggerated, relentless. He began imagining footsteps behind him, whispers in the street, accusations hidden inside ordinary conversations. When someone knocked on his door, his body froze. When he passed strangers, he felt exposed, as if guilt had stained his skin. The police questioned him casually one day about unrelated matters. Their calm tone unsettled him more than suspicion would have. He began analyzing every word, every pause, every glance. But here is the most devastating part. No one truly suspected him. The investigation moved slowly. Evidence was unclear. Life in the city continued. He could have walked free forever. Yet his mind refused freedom. The theory that once empowered him began to crumble. If he were extraordinary, Why was he drowning in fear? If he stood above morality, why did guilt dominate him? He realized something unbearable. He hadn't killed for justice. He had killed to prove something to himself. And he had failed. Days turned into weeks. He withdrew further into isolation. His thoughts became darker. Sometimes he convinced himself he had done the right thing, that society needed strong individuals willing to act. Other times, he felt crushed by shame so intense he could barely stand. He avoided mirrors. He avoided conversation. He avoided himself. Then he met someone who changed everything. A young woman, burdened by hardship, forced into sacrifice to support her family. She lived with dignity despite humiliation. Where he had responded to suffering with pride, she responded with compassion. When he finally confessed his crime to her, not out of strategy, but exhaustion, she did not recoil. She did not justify him either. She listened. And then she told him something simple. You are not dying because of what you did. You are dying because you are trying to carry it alone. For the first time, he felt understood, not as a genius, not as extraordinary, but as human. And that terrified him. Because being human meant being accountable. For months, he battled himself. Confess and admit he was not above morality, or remain silent and continue living inside psychological torment. The world did not force his confession. His conscience did. One morning, exhausted beyond pride, he walked into a police station and admitted everything. There was no dramatic chase, no clever twist. Just a broken man choosing truth over ego. He was sentenced to labor in a distant land, stripped of comfort, stripped of freedom. But something unexpected happened. Inside prison walls, the chaos in his mind began to quiet. Because the waiting was over. The secret was no longer hidden. The endless fear of exposure disappeared. And slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild himself, not as extraordinary, not as superior, but as human. And maybe that was the true beginning of his redemption. Here is the life reflection this story leaves us with. We often believe punishment comes from outside, from courts, from society, from consequences. But sometimes the heaviest punishment is internal. It is waking up every day knowing you betrayed your own values. It is pretending to smile while your thoughts accuse you. It is realizing that intelligence does not protect you from guilt. Pride whispers that you are different. Conscience whispers that you are not. So let me ask you something honestly. If you could do something wrong and never be caught, would it still haunt you? Is morality real only because of laws? Or because of the quiet voice inside you? If this story made you reflect even for a moment, write the word truth in the comments. And if you enjoy deep psychological storytelling inspired by the greatest novels ever written, make sure you're subscribed. Because next time, we may step inside a different mind and discover a different hidden prison. Because in the end, the world may never know. But you will. And sometimes, that is enough.